великою приємністю. При мені взагалі велика честь випала запрошувати, оголошувати наших іноземних друзів, наших колег за кордону. Отже, Аустє Накєнє, наша литовська колега, докторка гуманітарних наук, старша наукова співробітниця Інституту литовської літератури та фольклору. Розповість всі теми настільки різні і настільки цікаві, розповість про литовські партизанські пісні, повернення мотивів національного романтизму. Прошу до слова.
Hello, colleagues. I'm glad to be here. And I'm sending my greetings from Vilnius. Now I would like to share my screen. So, this paper is about artistic creation of the participants of the armed resistance that took place after the Second World War. In 1944, when Lithuania was occupied by the Soviet Union, thousands of patriots joined the resistance movement for the restoration of the statehood of their fatherland. The attempts of partisans to resist the brutal occupation extended over an entire decade, until 1953. Local people who supported the resistance movement tried to defend their native country not only with the guns, but also with the help of songs. These songs were created in extraordinary circumstances, when hiding from the invaders' prosecution, during preparations for fighting, at the times of mourning for the perished friends, and while dreaming of Lithuania free and independent again. In 2009, a volume of partisan songs was published by the Institute of Lithuanian Literature and Folklore. It is a book in the middle. This volume, the last in a series of historical military songs, was compiled by folklorists Kostas Aleksinas and Živilė Ramoškaitė. According to Kostas Aleksinas, post-war songs reflect not only the hardships endured throughout the first decade of the new occupation, especially in the first years, but also the hope of partisans and the general population to regain Lithuania's freedom and the eventual loss of that hope. In 1944, when the Soviet occupation began, the young generation of Lithuanians were faced with a choice between emigration, enduring the Red Terror, or joining the ranks of resistance fighters. Many of them chose the third path. The song, "The Soldiers Are Marching," a column after column, states resolutely, "We will defend Lithuania's freedom. We will sacrifice our young days for the ancestors' land." Then, joining the resistance, a partisan would receive a secret name: Oak, Sycamore, Lightning Bolt, Hawk, Giant, etc. According to historians, there was some spontaneity at the beginning of the resistance movement, but later a structure based on a military territorial principle was established. Continuing traditions of the Lithuanian armed forces, partisans functioned as a military structure. There were military uniforms and appropriate recognition badges. Soviets called our partisans bandits, but it was a lie. Local people called partisans forest brothers. The partisans spent long years hiding in the woods of Lithuania. They lived carefully covering their tracks, sleeping in the clammy bunkers set up on the ground. They fought protected by the darkness of the night. The central aim of partisan resistance was the re-establishment of Lithuania's independence, and only upon achieving it did the partisans hope to return to their homes and resume ordinary life. The majority of freedom fighters fought until their last breath. The people of Lithuania believed in the principle of self-determination of nations. They hoped that the question of the occupation of the Baltic countries would be raised sooner or later, and that the changed borders of the European countries would be deliberated in the near future. They expected the fight not to be long. The partisans' return to their homes is depicted quite romantically in the songs. We will return once there are no more enemies in Lithuania, when our tricolor flag will fly above the castle of Gediminas, when the strings of guitars will ring and Lithuanian girls will sing the songs. However, although with passing time, the partisans came to realize that they were facing long decades of captivity, they still evaded the attention of the leaders of the big powers and the support of the democratic world. This way of thinking of the young Lithuanians, one was not idealistic, as it was only in a free country that they could hope to live as full citizens. Your fate will depend on nation's fate. Individual existence runs against the big questions of freedom, statehood, and peace. The songs by partisans and their supporters continued the historical narrative of the independent Lithuania. The fights for independence of 1918 were an example of heroism to the partisans, which explains why the historical military songs of that period were so close to them. The songs could be sung again with only small change, replacing the word volunteers with the word partisans. But more often, new texts would be written to the well-known tunes of the volunteers. For instance, one, a dark and stormy night, when the wind was raging in the fields, partisans marched silently. On their shoulders hang guns, and in their hearts steel courage. There is a melody of this song. Song creators were inspired not only by the oral, but also by the written tradition of Lithuanian poetry, especially the poems of the bard of national revival, Maironis. Everyone knew them by heart. The poem O neverk motušyle, O don't cry, beloved mother, by Maironis, was unsurpassable hymn that inspired outstanding poets and unknown authors. O don't cry, beloved mother, that your young son will go to defend the dearest fatherland, that collapsed as a great oak tree of lush forests, he will await for the final day of justice. Don't break your arms in a way birch branches are broken by furious winds. You still have sons left who will lose his homeland, won't break out a second one. According to the literary historian Vytautas Kubilius, the history of Lithuania a history of never-ending invasions, revolutions, and fights for liberation. It invoked not as much hymns of joy as those of mourning. The paradigm of such hymn has not been changing since the times of Maironis. There are values that must be protected even at the cost of one's life. You are not scared to die when justice is on your side. Many war songs of the 20th century display similarities with the hymns by Maironis. In the understanding of the creators, the post-war resistance was part of the eternal struggle for freedom. And although the freedom fighters died, the struggle did not stop. Having served your duty to the motherland, you died in the battlefield. You extinguished when the freedom dawned. You won the battle, but not for yourself. As partisan songs were created by the younger generation, they remind us not only traditional war songs, but also of love songs. If one had to briefly define the genre of the post-war songs, it would be the romances of the interwar period. Due to historical changes, the romances changed and started to speak not only of a lost love, but also of lost freedom. They became even more sentimental and painful. One of the popular romances was "The Autumn Has Come," with the characteristic motif of separation. With the accents of its meaning changed, it became a partisan song. We can compare. Don't wait, my dear girl, don't lean against the gate. I won't come. I won't sing your sweet songs anymore. Or don't wait, dear girl, don't lean against the gate. I won't come. I left to fight for the native land. The melody of this romance contains wistful syncopation and the heart-rending twist of a tune in its second part. According to Vytautas Kubilius, some partisan songs features a typical smart Lithuanian soldier inherited from the pre-war military songs, but here this typical soldier is placed in romance situations. For example, be well, my dear girl, dream about sweet love, while the fate of a partisan awaits me. Give me your hand, let me gaze into your eyes. This moment will be my most treasured memory. And there is a melody of this song. Romantic heroes are not only personages of the songs. The place of action is also painted with very romantic features. In the songs of the partisans and of homesick deportees, the landscape of Lithuania looks like a postcard. Their native homesteads are surrounded by swaying crops and green meadows, and gardens are in blossom. Such pictures are not drawn for their own sake. It is a beautiful Lithuania for which they fought and which they believe. Some aspects of entertainment culture can also be discerned in partisan songs. Their melodies resemble German waltzes, Polish tangos, and American foxtrots. More likely, the partisans heard them on the radio or from gramophone records. In those days, wealthy farmers and public servants owned radio sets or gramophones. Often the emigrants returning from America brought them home. So, in all probability, the tunes to which verses of partisan tangos and foxtrots were written came from such sources. When Soviet occupation descended on them, the young patriots based their songs on the cultural impressions of independent Lithuania that were still alive in their minds. When writing the songs, they not only saw the views of independent Lithuania, but also preserved the sounds of that earlier Lithuania in their memories. Nostalgic feelings were conveyed both by pre-war melodies and by the musical instruments that used to be played in leisure time. The violin, the accordion, and especially the guitar. The singing of the beloved, accompanied by the guitar and its gently weeping strings, are frequently mentioned in romances. This instrument features in a number of post-war songs. For example, I often see my native land in my dreams. There is a homestead, a girl is sitting at the window. Please don't cry, my dear. Play a tune on a guitar. Just remember that love never dies. In the songs of the partisans and the deportees, the guitar is a symbol of love, youth, and freedom. In post-war music, it is possible to discern the opposition romance and march. The romance means love and a desire to live in freedom, while the military march implies hatred and the striving to overpower others. Guitar is a really typical instrument, and there is one more photograph. Then partisan songs are sung, and guitar is played during the ceremony of commemoration of freedom fighters. And now there are my conclusions. The lyrics of partisan songs spoke about the tragic fate of Lithuania and its population. They also praised the green village lifestyle destroyed by the invaders. In creating their songs, the freedom fighters preserved the way of thinking of the pre-war society and continued the historical narrative of independent Lithuania. The public life of the pre-war years had not faded from their memory yet. The reminiscences of the past were sources not only of partisan spiritual strength, but of their poetic creation too. As the songs were created by the younger generation, they remind us not only of traditional war songs, but also of love songs. In the lyrics of songs, young freedom fighters are depicted as romantic characters. The tunes of songs also have some similarities with popular marches, foxtrots, and waltzes. One can notice the influence of youth culture even in the visions of a desired future. The restoration of independent Lithuania is imagined as a great music festival. We will return to our homesteads when there are no more enemies in Lithuania, when the strings of guitars will ring and the girls will sing songs. And the various visualization of that romantic, imagined romantic future. It is not Lithuanian, it is Ukrainian, but all the motives are very similar. Sweet home, green trees, birds, flowers, girls sitting in a garden, singing songs and playing sweet music. Independence, freedom, beautiful life, happiness and joy. So it is the end. Thank you for attention. And now maybe I would like to share one more example of singing.
Аустє Накєнє.
I think
Можна?
such is the singing, very traditional and very romantic.
Дякуємо. Дякуємо, дуже цікаво, будь ласка, вже є реакція. Анастасія Колодюк, прошу, запитуйте.
Доброго дня, дякую дуже за вашу доповідь, вона є цікавою, і я хочу просто тільки доповнити це, якби, що у нас досі в Україні є люди, які пам'ятають цей рух, які, просто я займалася саме напрямком цієї дуже схожим повстанських пісень, і у нас є ще досі носії фольклору, які можуть розповісти багато дрібниць, і, власне, про вишкіл, коли вони якби вивчали ці пісні, що вони не просто вивчали їх там одне від одного, а що в них там прям цілий напрямок був, під час якого вони вчили ці пісні. Якщо буде цікаво, то я буду дуже вдячна з вами поспілкуватися. Я візьму контакти ваші і можемо продовжити розмову. Дякую.
Аустє, ви зрозуміли, чи треба перекласти вам?
I think I understand that Lithuanian songs and Ukrainian songs could be compared, and maybe some similar melodies could be found. These melodies are different from earlier folk songs, and they remind something. As I said, they remind some Polish melodies, German, even gypsy melodies, maybe Belarusian and Ukrainian. We should compare them, and then we will find out how these beautiful melodies came to our country, or maybe from our country they came to neighboring countries as well.
Дякуємо. Є ще питання в когось? Поки, може, хтось ще зараз формулює. От у нас цей рух, це в основному в Україні, це західні території, таке серце, мабуть, всіх цих подій, це, от, зокрема, Волинь. Тобто на півдні, на сході, це, якщо і був супротив, він не настільки був організований, все-таки це західні землі. А в Литві цей рух в основному був зосереджений на якійсь території, чи це по всій Литві було? Звичайно, Литва менша, тобто це загально таке поширене явище було, чи більш локальне? Якщо понятно.
Yes, this movement was everywhere in Lithuania, but the southern Lithuanian warriors were very brave, and they were brave, and they created many songs because the singing tradition was more alive in the southern Lithuania. And in western part, in Samogitia, the songs remind poems. Rhymes are typical for them. It is such a strange genre, poem or folk song. It is sung poetry, maybe. But in southern Lithuania, the songs are more traditional, and they remind traditional war historical songs. There are some regional differences.
Зрозуміло, дякуємо. А ще в когось є питання? Тоді ще в мене коротеньке, вибачте. Можливо, я це прислухала. Чи можна зараз записати ось цей репертуар саме в селах? Так, щоб не з нот, не з текстів, а от просто, щоб люди собі знали, як фольклор, такий справжній. Наскільки це жива традиція, чи це вже якось більш так відійшло в минуле?
It is still possible, but the partisans, they are old men already. They are 18 years, 80 years or 90 years. They are really veterans. But the younger generation sings those songs. Of course, they learn them from the printed sources. So there are two volumes, two academic books published by our institute. One big volumes about 500 songs are partisan songs, and another volume are war songs and deportees songs. Those sung of people deported to Siberia or Kazakhstan or Arctic region of Soviet Union. And the melodies and texts sometimes are very similar. So there are about 1,000 of printed songs, and young generation can learn and sing them.
Зрозуміло, дякуємо. Будь ласка, Адріана.
Дякую за це, бо я виростала, співаючи такі пісні, бо мої родичі були в тих околицях і те співали. So I just wanted to thank you, and I wanted to ask about the Polish cultural realm, because I have a feeling that a lot of these songs, as they were traveling, even the melodic structures are just so similar and very different from what you would consider traditional Lithuanian music. And I just wanted to ask if maybe we can go a little bit further back, because we're talking about World War II, but maybe World War before, whether these songs were circulating. І я тільки скажу колегам, що мелодія «Взяв би я бандуру» в Румунії рахується як партизанська пісня. Так що я питаюся, чи можна вернутися перед Другою світовою війною, запитатися, чи є ще за Польщі, чи були якісь такі мелодії, котрі переходили з одного місця до другого.
It could be so, but I did not compare the melodies yet. I only can say that during the Soviet time, the partisan songs were sung in exile. And those people who emigrated, who went to USA, they used to sing them. And the first books, first songs were published in the United States. And they were a part of life tradition there. But in Lithuania, we could start to sing only when the independence of the Republic of Lithuania was restored. They were not sung in Soviet time.
Так, добре. Настя, ще маєш щось сказати?
Так, я хочу доповнити, власне, про пісні доповстанські, тому що в Україні дуже багато в повстанських піснях, які співають зараз, виконують, зустрічаються поняття стрілець, стрілецький, і вони мелодично дуже схожі з тією епохою. Тобто це вже і пішло, як вони брали стрілецькі пісні, і давали зверху, якби придумували сучасніший текст. І якщо подивитися ще далі, то є історичні пісні, там, де ще згадується Байда, і так само вони вже перейшли, мелодія, каркас мелодії лишився давніший, а вже слова були осучаснені. У нас є такі зразки, у нас є.
Yes, there are so-called volunteer songs. They were created during the independence fights after the First World War. And those songs had some similarity with Polish songs, and there were so-called Polish rhythms. Ta-da-dum-tum, ta-da-dum-tum. in those songs because they were still connected with earlier uprisals, and fights against the Tsarist army in the 19th century. But the partisan songs created after the Second World War, some were the same songs, melodies and text, just changed a little bit, but some were more modern. There were also new songs.
Thank you.
Дякуємо. Дякуємо, якщо немає більше питань. Немає. Дуже дякуємо, Аустє, за те, що ви з нами, за те, що ви розумієте українські питання. Так що молодці. Дуже-дуже вам дякуємо і чекаємо вас з публікаціями в наших збірниках наукових. Будемо дуже раді, якщо ви напишете для нас статті. Це стосується всіх наших доповідачів.